Welcome viewers to Channel 15 Northwest Access TV here in St. Albans, Vermont. And this is a special report that we are happy to be able to bring you through Public Access TV. It's entitled Keep Our Franklin County Courthouse Open. I'm your host, Margaret Harrington. And viewers, let's welcome our guest, Judge Ben Joseph, retired Supreme Court judge from the state of Vermont.
I never got that promotion. I was a Superior Court judge.
Superior Court judge. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
There.
I don't regret it.
Okay, no regrets.
No regrets.
So, Judge Ben, we're addressing this situation where the Vermont Supreme Court has proposed amending its rules for family proceedings to allow for termination of parental rights (TPR) cases to be consolidated to a single location within a 4-county area. And the public really is in the dark about this. We've seen a few articles written in the St. Albans Messenger by Michelle Monroe in which the attorneys and judges have expressed their concern about the proposed change and saying it would limit the ability of some of Vermont's poorest citizens to access justice. And they're also concerned that the change might represent a first step toward greater consolidation and regionalization of the state's courts. So, Judge Ben, take it from the top on this, and
from the top.
Yeah, what is going on, and who is this going to affect the most?
Well, it's certainly going to affect the citizens of Franklin and Grand Isle counties. I'm a resident of Grand Isle, and I'm on the select board there. And really, Franklin and Grand Isle are kind of treated as one in that the judge who sits in Grand Isle comes over from Franklin, at least once a week, and presides over there. Mm-hmm. For some time, we haven't had enough judge time in Grand Isle. And last year, we had a select board meeting, and we invited legislators and judges. And lawyers came in and told us stories about the delays in the court and the lack of judge time in Grand Isle. Mm-hmm. One of the lawyers, Joe Bauer, described how he had a case, a non-jury trial in a civil matter. It took 5 days of court time to try the case. But because he could not get 2 consecutive days at any point, it took literally 2 years to do 5 days worth of testimony. So at the end of the 5th day, they had to order transcripts so the judge, because the judge couldn't remember, it wasn't me, but it was another judge, he couldn't remember, and so then he had to study the transcripts before he could make a ruling. This really is this is not right. The delays are just awful. And this has been going on for a while here in Franklin. As a retired Superior Court judge, I am called on once in a while to preside, to help out. In September, I was called to sit for a day in Franklin on a TPR case. I don't know if the public understands. Franklin has the greatest backlog of termination of parental rights and abuse cases in the state. These cases the abuse of children cases are often called CHINS cases, child in need of supervision. And when I was called over in September, the backlog was 129 cases. So I had a list of cases, and I called the case, and I had come in the day before and read all the files. And I'll come back to that in a minute. Having read all the files, when the case was called, I asked, there was a little boy, 12, 13 years old. I said, is this little boy still with the maternal grandmother? What I meant by that was when the kid had been picked up in February, he was in his father's home, and he had been placed, according to the reports in the file, with his maternal grandmother. Mm-hmm. So I said, is he still with the maternal grandmother? And they said, no, he's been moved to his mother's house. Now, I knew, because I'd read the file, that the mother lived with a convicted sex offender, someone who'd once gotten 10 to 30 years from molesting a kid. So I say to them, how can it be that the kid would be in his mother's house? And it quickly became clear to me I was the only one in the courtroom who'd read the whole file. So they weren't unaware of that. So I said, I want an explanation right away. How can this child be in a home with a convicted sex offender? So they come back 10 minutes later, and the the report is, oh, the Department of Children and Family Worker assigned to the case says it was okay to put the kid there because the man had completed treatment. I said, so my response to that was, after I took a slow count to 10, I said, well, that not only is that against common sense, that's against the statute. You can't put the kid in a home with a convicted sex offender. So by the end of the day, I had the kid out of the home with the convicted sex offender, back with his maternal grandmother, and had ordered a full assessment as to why this child had been behaving so violently. It was not a mystery to me. I mean, obviously this kid had been abused, and this is why he was behaving in this way. That is a 6-month delay in getting a case into court. It's caused by the enormous number of cases. I can give you more examples.
Well, but you've right from the get-go here, you've given us who is impacted most in this, and it's the children.
Oh,
and in this case, then this is a stopgap, right? I mean, what is the purpose of this, of moving the TPR cases to another county?
I think the idea is that that other counties have more time, that they have more judicial resources. This fall, when there was this big backlog up here, there was a bigger backlog in Franklin than there was in Chittenden. But Franklin only had one judge assigned to its family division, so one judge. In Chittenden and Burlington, there were 3 judges. So I think the notion was that they'd be better suited to do it. But even in Burlington, they were behind. They had a backlog there.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that goes into this. Last year, I'm active in the Franklin Grand Isle Bar Association, and last year we passed a resolution that instead of 3 Superior Court judges in Franklin, there should be 4. And there should be, in addition to the one more judge, there should be 2 more law clerks to help the judges get the work out. So that went nowhere. That was just completely ignored by the Supreme Court. They didn't do anything about that. So now the situation is so bad that there are still, briefly this summer, we only had 2 judges serving Franklin and Grand Isle, which was very difficult. Now we're back to 3. Now there are 3 basic divisions in every Superior Court. There's criminal, civil, and family. Because this backlog is so great with these Chins cases, now the family court judge has been assigned to do nothing but what they call the juvenile docket, which involves abuse of children and termination of parental rights. She's not doing any of what they call the domestic docket, divorces and the things that happen after a divorce, custody, visitation, stuff like that. Those cases, the so-called domestic docket, are being shared by the 2 judges who have criminal and civil. It's just ridiculous. There's going to be delays. And one of the things we're always, at least I was told back when I went to law school with the dinosaurs, justice delayed is justice denied. And they're building it. We've got built-in delays here because of the volume of cases, and we don't have enough judge time. So we need an additional judge assigned to Franklin and Grand Isle County, and we need these law clerks to help them move the cases. I just find it amazing that someone would want to shrink the system.
Right, and it's a question of power, right? The Supreme Court has this power, and what exactly is the power that they will move? They have the power to move.
Well, they don't
justice around.
They don't have the power to move the cases now. That's what they're asking for.
Okay.
They're asking for the power to move cases into one central court in our situation from a 4-county area. We've got Chittenden, Grand Isle, Franklin, and Addison. So they want to regionalize this so they can move cases into Burlington, into the Chittenden County courts, so that people who live in the outlying counties will not have access to a local courthouse for certain kinds of cases. So while I've heard protestations about, we really don't want to close the courthouse, okay, the door will be open, but the cases won't be there. They're going to be moved to Burlington. And why? It's not going to save money. I mean, it's going to be more expensive for people for litigants and witnesses and victims of crime to come to a courthouse for a hearing. The courts have served many functions, among them protection of women and children. And if child abuse cases are going to have to be moved, into Burlington, it's going to be more difficult to hear those cases and to get the witnesses in, to get the police officers in. It's not going to save money, and it's not going to serve the public. It's going to serve the courts.
And yes, and yet it is touted as an efficiency measure.
Oh,
efficiency is the word that they're pushing.
You're pushing all my buttons today, Margaret.
Okay.
Look, the state of Vermont has a total budget of about $5.5 billion. Mm-hmm. The judicial budget is $42.7 million. That is less than 1%. People aren't aware of this, but the judiciary collects over $23 million a year in fines and costs that are paid into the judiciary, but we don't keep the money. That money goes into the general fund. Mm-hmm. So what it's really costing the state to operate its judicial system is less than 0.5% of its budget. We are, per capita spending, Vermont ranks about 49th in the country, which is probably, if you really look very closely, I suspect we're 50th. We just aren't spending money on this. And it's not because we don't have the money, it's because we want to spend the money on other things. And I think the thing that's been discouraging is last year there was the governor's budget proposed an even more dramatic cut in judicial funding, which passed the House of Representatives. I'll never be able to say enough good about Dick Mazza and some people in the state Senate. They stopped that.
And Dick Mazza is the senator from Grand Isle.
He represents Grand Isle and Colchester and parts of Chittenden, but he represents my town. He represents North Hero, and he's been steadfast in this. And if it weren't for Dick and a couple of other people, heaven knows where we'd be. It's just, I don't know why. All I can say is there's a certain design to shrink the court system, to cut off access to cases for people who live in the outgoing and rural areas. To say that a woman from Richford is going to have to go to Burlington for her hearing it's just outrageous,
Yeah, and it's not just one hearing, is it?
Oh,
is
no.
it, Judge? It's an ongoing. It's a process that is
people have to go over and over again. That's exactly right. Like, you have these cases where people are abused, a woman is beaten, and she wants to get a court order. Mm-hmm. She has to go to court repeatedly. And in my county, in North Hero, in my town in North Hero, we have this terrific sheriff. One of the many things he does is he provides transportation for victims when he can, because it's difficult. It's difficult.
What is his name?
Ray Allen. He's a great guy, and he, that raises a whole nother set of issues. The sheriffs haven't gotten a cost of living raise in 3 years, and it's been very hard for me to understand why the executive branch, specifically Governor Shumlin, for him to look at Dick Mazza and say, I'm going to close the Grand Isle Courthouse, which is what he did last year. And Dick Mazza, bless him, said, over my dead body.
Yeah.
We pray for Dick Mazza's health.
Well, this is like a backstory to what this process. This is a process of centralizing the judiciary.
Yes, it is. That's a fair way to characterize it.
What I meant by backstory is that you're quoting that Governor Shumlin actually did say this.
He said that. Oh, he absolutely said that. He said that to Dick, and Dick said, over my dead body. And Mazza prevented a further cut in the judicial budget, trying to stop that. Mm. Now, really what's needed is a dramatic increase in the amount of money spent on the judiciary. The docket clerks are leaving because they haven't gotten a raise in a long time. It's a real crisis, and it's not just in Franklin, which has lost people for this reason. It's also in Chittenden, it's in Rutland, it's in other places. I mean, in the last 6 months, I sat in Rutland, White River, Grand Isle, and Franklin, and it's the same all over. I just don't know why you'd want to, this is, it's, you know, these are the three branches of government, right? There's the
Right.
executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. And they're supposed to be separate but equal,
Right.
right? Yeah. In 1975, an author named Charles Baer, I think, I'm not quite sure, I think his name was Baer, published a book called Separate but Subservient, which you can get through the National Center for State Courts. And in this book, he talked about how there was a pattern in the United States now of state legislators not giving enough money to the courts to provide adequate service. And while Vermont's one of the worst examples of this, we're not the only one that's been faced with this. So the National Center for State Courts actually has in their website something for telling people who are interested how to advocate in their legislatures in their states to get more money for the courts.
Okay.
I just, give you another example. I was over in Grand Isle in, I think, the beginning of October, and I was sitting for a day, and there was late in the afternoon, a case comes up. Father, there'd been a divorce, children were living with the mother. Father had filed an action asking that custody be transferred to him so the kid could go to a better high school. Mm-hmm. So I call the case. I've had a full day. I've had, 30 minutes for lunch and just nonstop cases. It's after 4 o'clock. I call this case and I say, what's this one involved? And they tell me, and I'd read the file. So I said, well, how many witnesses are there? So the father, the child says, well, there are 8 witnesses. Mm-hmm. And I said, sir, I'm sorry. I mean, it's 20 after 4. I can't start a case with 8 witnesses. I'm not going to be able to reach this. So the guy just burst out. He said, Judge, this is the 3rd time I've been here, and I've been waiting for hours with my witnesses. And I apologized the best I can because I was embarrassed. It's an awful thing.
And meanwhile, there's the son who
meanwhile,
wants to go
meanwhile,
to
the
school.
kid is not in the school where the dad thought it was. I found out later that the 4th time the father came back and they heard the case, the father won, he got custody, and the kid went to the school. It was going to be better for him, and, it kind of worked out. But people shouldn't, it's just a basic in our state constitution is that people have access to justice.
Right.
That's part of our system. But, to say that, they've got access to justice when they have to come back 4 times over months,
right,
or even years of delay, nah, this isn't right. When I was sent down to White River to do a jury case, case involved a career criminal. A guy had a 38-year-long criminal record. Previous convictions in California, Arizona, Florida, and Massachusetts. Felony convictions. And he was accused of a burglary, charged with a burglary here. This guy had been out most of the time on bail for 2 years before the case came to trial. And these delays have, I'm sure he was not, he wasn't out selling books in that 2-year period. These delays have very serious consequences for the public.
And Judge Ben, you're speaking of the balance of power, legislative, executive, and judicial.
Right.
Who is the Supreme Court asking permission from to bring about this amendment to the rules for family proceedings?
They've put that it's a bill that's proposed to the legislature.
Ah, okay.
So they've put that to the legislature. Now, they haven't asked permission to they haven't asked they have not, first of all, they have not asked for any real increases in judicial resources for the last 5 years. I mean, in a report that the Supreme Court sent to the legislature last year commenting on the proposed budget, they remarked on the chronic, it's an amazing choice of words, the chronic underfunding of the judiciary. And they said that unless the number of cases, like in these child abuse cases, declined or resources were added, there'd be more delays. Well, the number of cases hasn't gone down, and the number of resources hasn't gone up. So we just have chronic delays. And these things have to be addressed. The statutes say that these cases where a kid is taken into custody because of an abusive situation, that's supposed to be in the court within 30 days. That was the case with the thing I described to you where there's a 6-month delay. This hurts people. It really hurts people. And I don't, I talk to other friends and some of them are judges, and we just don't understand. I just don't understand why you would think this is a good thing. Why would a governor tell a state legislature he's going to close a county court? It's just amazing to me.
And Judge Ben, let's talk about this. The Grand Isle State's Attorney Doug DeSabato.
DeSabato, right?
Yes, who has started an online petition at change.org
Yep.
to keep the Grand Isle Courthouse open with no venue changes.
Yes, he's just celebrated his 1-year anniversary in the job, and he's been really good for us. He's really working hard and he's trying, and I think he appreciates, as do I and other people, that if you're moving cases out of the county, you're just creating a lot more hardship. People are going to not have in the law we say in our textbooks, timely access to justice.
Right.
You're not going to have timely access to justice anymore. And Doug appreciates that. I know he is going to be, I think it's tomorrow at 1, he'll be meeting with people in the House Judiciary Committee to talk about these issues. And we need advocacy from people like Doug. And I think we really need an intelligent input from legislators, because the way this is being managed, and is by the executive, and I think, frankly, with the complicity of the Supreme Court, they're changing the system without telling the legislature what they're doing. And I think, I've come to I never was much involved in politics, but I've come to understand, these citizen legislators, often, there are very few lawyers comparatively in our legislature. And a lot of people, they don't really understand what's going on. So it's incumbent on, frankly, on people like you and people like me to tell them what's going on here. And I think if legislators start to really understand this, I think we can make some progress.
Right, and I'd like to quote one of Doug DeSabato's remarks. He said about, if you truly think about it and read the proposed rule and read the proposed statutory changes from the Supreme Court, which
Right.
I'm sure you all have, meaning all in the legal world.
Yeah, this is good.
What it does is it requires the public to serve the judiciary instead of the judiciary serving the public in the most convenient venues around the state. A quote taken from my colleague Vince Eluzzi. It makes no sense. So long as we have functioning courthouses that are taxpayer supported, we should use them.
Well, yeah, I think there's something that's an issue in Grand Isle County. The state doesn't provide us with a courthouse. The county provides the courthouse. And it's a particular issue in Grand Isle County because Grand Isle County sends a little over $6 million a year to Montpelier to pay for other people's school expenses. And we can't have a courthouse? You want to shrink our courthouse? You want to say, amazing. It's just amazing. It's really hard ultimately it's hard to understand. I don't know.
And the lack of transparency is alarming in it, because the people who have to go to court and are summoned then from Richford, say, in
Right.
far north Vermont, down to Chittenden County, the transport is a problem. I mean, a lot of people have trouble with they have no cars.
There's no public transportation.
There's no public transportation. So
Yeah. Oh well, I to think that in my county, for example, there are people who come down from Alberg and Isle of Mont. You're going to send those people to Burlington? I mean, it's just not right, and it's just so hard to understand why people don't appreciate. Not. I think there are people who get involved in cases who appreciate it very much and complain bitterly, but the media, I keep thinking I'm going to see someone on Channel 3 talking about this. No.
Yeah.
You know, public television, nope, nope, I don't see it. I'm so pleased that you invited me here to talk about it, but I just don't know why this hasn't caught fire. I mean, I'm hoping that we're going to find some legislative champion who's going to really dig in on this, and tell the Supreme Court and tell the governor, you're not going to shrink the system. You know, you're not going to take away rights from people who live in the rural counties.
Well, I think in one of the things that you've written here, it seems that you make the point that that the delays caused by the proposed rule would give the court the power to send cases from St. Albans, North Hero, and Middlebury to Burlington, the Chittenden County Court.
Right.
And then you ask, why should only people in Chittenden County have access to justice? So,
Well, you know, that's true. I mean, I think these changes are ultimately not going to save anybody any money.
yeah.
But even if they were, you know, if you say that, you know, that state police don't get as many calls on Isle of Mont as they do in, say, Colchester, so we shouldn't have state police responsibilities in Isle of Mont. You know, these are basic services that have to be provided. It's I don't know. I just don't know how people can look in the mirror and say this is a good idea, because it's not serving the public.
Well, but see, the public that we're talking about here are a lot of the poor public, and
Right.
in remote rural areas
Yep.
where the median income is $15,000 a year for a family, and this is significant in the way that justice is dealt with here in Vermont.
Yep.
And it's. Thank you very much for discussing this with us and bringing it out into the open. And what about the proposed rule change as lightening the load? What about that?
You know, I've got to say, I can't help but smile. This rule change, the statute to change the rules that permit consolidation is called lighten the load. That's the title of the statute. And I think to myself, lighten the load for whom? For the Supreme Court? Huh? For who? Whose load is being lightened?
Yeah.
It's certainly going to increase the load for the people who need the courts, for the woman who needs a protection order, for the woman who wants to go to court and get support. You know, the courts serve the needs of the public. It's public service. The citizens shouldn't be serving the judiciary. It's the other way around. So that's why I say those things.
Well, Judge Ben, besides making us aware of what this big problem, and it seems that it's charging along, that it just might happen, this venue change and this juggling around of
Right.
people and transport and having
Right.
them transported
Right.
an hour and a half away from where they live. What is the recourse?
I think the legislature has to increase the funding to the judiciary. I think that there has to be, you know, we've lost people from the Franklin Clerk's office because the pay is so poor. I think there has to be. I know the Vermont, the State Employees Union has been proposing an increase in payment for the docket clerks. I think that has to be done ASAP to stop the drain on the resources, and there has to be some additional, the legislature has to provide for more judges. I mean, we've now got 32 judges, which was the number that was needed in 1998. That was full staffing almost 20 years ago. We need more people.
Okay.
And the legislature's key. The legislature's key. The governor's made it clear that he wants to shrink the system. The Supreme Court's going along with this through various devices. It's the legislators that have to stop this.
Okay, and Judge Ben, you have suggested that viewers are urged to contact the Sergeant at Arms.
They can, yes, you can call into the Sergeant at Arms and say you want a message sent to your legislator that you want more support for our courts. And it's a simple message. I think the question here is the number of people who call in. You know, the more people who call the Sergeant at Arms for the legislature and say they want their legislator told that they want help for the court system, that's significant.
Okay, and we'll have that flashed on the screen. The number is 802-828-2828. 2228, the Sergeant at Arms is Janet Miller. jmiller@leg.state.vt.us. Thank you very much, Judge
Okay.
Ben, for enlightening us.
Thank you, Margaret.
And
It's a
thank you,
pleasure.
viewers, and thank you, Channel 15.